Well, good afternoon, everyone, or morning, depending on what part of Canada you're in today. My name is Craig Hurst. I am the Chief Operating Officer of the Net Effect. The Net Effect is a company that specializes in helping construction businesses, whether you're a general contractor or subtrade or specialty supplier, adapt or adopt to new technology to help you run your business more efficiently. Today, I'm joined by Rick Harris. Rick Harris is the lead of a company called Workboot Consulting. Workboot Consulting is in the business of providing construction businesses with coaching and direction in terms of how to improve their operations and helping contractors go from being business operators to business owners. So with that, I'm going to let Rick take a few moments to introduce himself and share with you some insight into what Workboot Consulting can do for you.
Thanks, Craig. Hey, guys. So as Craig had said, I help contractors with their business. I'm basically like a fractional general manager. So coming in and coaching, consulting, and getting systems built inside of your business. I come from a trades background. So I'm a licensed plumber by trade, gas fitter, owned a couple of businesses, exited them. Family businesses. So if anybody's involved in a family business, I certainly understand where you're at. So I started it because we had coaches that came in and helped us with our business, but they weren't consultants. So they were coaches in that they were suggesting that we do things, but they never went through and helped us do it. And as great as they were, I always thought there was something a little bit more that could be done. So when I exited the business, I went on and I went on a bit of a journey, and I got certified as a coach, a consultant. I ended up becoming head of coaching at an online coaching company, which was great. But then I wanted to go back and do my own thing. I wanted more control over what it is I was doing. So what I do is I come in, a client will come see me. Usually it's a tradesperson who started a business, a plumber who starts a plumbing company, electrician, and so on. So I help all types of contractors. So usually there's issues with them. We identify the first issues that you've got. We help get those under control. And then we start right at the beginning of your business and figuring out why you started your business, putting systems in place and mission, vision, and core values and all those other things that come along with it. So I love helping contractors.
Great. So today, what we're going to be talking about in that same context as Rick has just explained is that we're going to talk about leading change in construction operations. And so what we're going to talk about initially is we're going to talk about how to identify operational bottlenecks and understanding the core areas hindering building efficiencies within your construction business. So, Rick, I was wondering if you have any words of wisdom in terms of how to identify bottlenecks.
Yeah, it's usually how often does your team reach out to you and ask you questions? If you're the linchpin in the entire operations of your business, and I'm not saying anything other than the day-to-day operations, the building, the doing of, the client intake, the estimating, all the other things that come along with it. If you're the go-to for everything, you're the bottleneck. So you're slowing things down. The easiest way to figure out if you are the bottleneck is to go on vacation for a week or two and see what happens to your business. If everything just falls apart, then you are definitely the bottleneck of your business.
And what are some of the typical bottlenecks that you're seeing out there right now, in particularly amongst us? You work primarily with subtrades. What kind of things are you seeing that's hindering their business growth?
Um, it could be, it all comes down to communication. So what ends up happening with when I say a bottleneck is if everybody relies on you to be the person responsible for getting materials to the job site, that's a problem. If everybody relies on you to give them direction, that's a problem. If you're the person that is responsible for a client acquisition or training or any of those other types of things, that's where you're going to have an issue. So scheduling, as a sub trade, you're at the mercy of your GC, your clients, and that sort of thing. So if you're the one that is responsible for making sure everybody gets to the job site on time and knows what they're supposed to be doing, that's a problem. It's not efficient. So everything's flowing through you. All communication flows through you.
Right. When we were having a discussion about what to cover today, one of the things that you talked about a fair amount, and it's important to many of our clients is, how does data or the lack of data and knowing how to use it present a bottleneck?
Well, it was interesting. I had a client um, that I was working with, and their accountant said to me that they had a certain amount of losses, all based on unbillable labor. That unbillable labor showed up simply because of the processes. Now, once the accountant said to me how much it was, I said, okay, that's not a problem. So I used that data to dial in to see what their process was for starting a project, and that's where it was a delay. So the way they were running the project, the owner would estimate the job, book it in, and then get the guys set up. And the way it was set up is the guys would go to the job site, start, see what they needed, come back, get the materials, and then get started. So that initial back and forth of running back to the wholesale or the supply house is what was slowing them down. It was simply a matter of processes. Then we took a look at their bill out rate and the number of people that they had inside of their company, and there were they had too many guys, is what it came down to. So they had a handful of guys that were not producing. So we went through, identified the three that should go. And what that did is it changed the way their overhead looked. It changed the way their unbillable labor was working, and it changed the way that they were profitable. So it was a really quick turnaround just based on data that we gathered from the accountant.
Right. You certainly can't improve what you can't measure. And
No.
so And so that's, if you don't have the ability to use data to measure uh, performance in a number of different ways, it's almost impossible to improve your organization, no matter how much effort you want to put into it, without knowing exactly where your key problems are, what kind of processes are underway, what those processes are achieving. It's really very, very difficult to create improvement. So thank you. That's great insight. Okay, the next point that we're going to talk a little bit about is let's talk a little bit about building a high performance team. Because too often the person that is trying, is thinking of themselves as a business owner, but they really are just an operator within that
Mhm.
business, is probably not building a very good team. Would you agree?
Absolutely. They have a tiger by the tail, and they're leading based on what they've seen work in the past, or they're doing the opposite of what they've seen because they just didn't like it. Um, Usually, what happens with business owners and what I've seen is they flip on two sides. They're either too lenient or they're too harsh on their team. Either way is not effective. The way you have to look at your team and develop those soft skills is to be, empathetic yet courageous, meaning that you understand where people are at, and that they are people, but you have to be courageous enough to step in and say, no, this is not acceptable. This is not how we do things.
Mhm.
So if you are trying to lead based out of fear, that works for a little while. People will follow you simply because of you're the boss. If you spend time getting to know your team, they will follow you because they choose to, because of who you are and how you're developing. But yeah, there's certain things that you have to say that are acceptable and not acceptable. And it could be, something as simple as, showing up on time, 15 minutes late. And if there are no consequences for doing that type of thing, that will continue to happen. And so somebody explained it to me one time, the accountability and consequences, and when you're developing a team. If you're speeding and you drive the same road every day, and you know that there's never going to be the police there running radar, you will continue to speed on that road. But the odd time, if you are held, you see a cop running radar, chances are you're going to not speed. So it's you have to love on your team, but you also have to hold them accountable, and that's the way they need to be led.
Right. And then, one of the other things that is also important is recognizing that a team, you know, uh, I played a lot of sports in my life, and
Right.
one of my sports was football.
Mhm.
And if you take a look at the structure of a successful football team, and you can choose whoever you want, but point being is you've got a quarterback, you've got linemen, you've got running
Mhm.
backs, you've got wide receivers. Everybody has their strengths and their specialties, and
Mhm.
you can't win the game with everybody having the same strength.
No.
If you put all quarterbacks on the field, you're not going to be successful. If you put, you have to, as a coach, one of the things that's really super important is making sure that everybody's strengths are complementary to everybody else's weaknesses.
Mhm.
Right. So that to me is a very important component of building a high performance team. The best leaders in the world recognize that they can't do everything.
Mhm.
They need, in the case of construction, they need engineers, and they need project managers, and they need frontline guys with their work boots on to do everything that needs to be done in order to have a successful outcome of a project. So that's a really key important area as well. When you're advising your clients on soft skill development within their workforce, what kind of skills are you seeing that are really important these days? How much does somebody's technical savvy, as an example, come to play in terms of being a good team member?
Well, technical savvy. So that's a skill. It's a skill, and like any skill, it can be learned. I prefer to focus more on traits. How people are, as what their traits are. I mean, you
Right.
look at you and I. We've been around for a while. I was not a kid that grew up with cell phones. It wasn't until I was an adult that I started to see cell phones. But you can learn those types of things if you are willing to embrace change, if you are open, if you're accountable, if you're coachable. All the other things that you look for on a football team is what you want in a member of your team. And I love what you said about football, because every single person on that team, from the back office to the athletic therapist to the trainers to the coaches, they all matter. They're all important. And the big thing about the successful football teams is everybody there understands their role and everybody understands how their role contributes to the success of the team.
Right. And then sort of finishing off on this component, what are you seeing as sort of tools for motivation? How do you help that team get motivated not only as a group but also to a great degree individually? What's working successfully amongst your clients in order to do that?
It's not money. Everybody thinks it's money. I'm going to pay my guys more per hour. I'm going to give them bonuses. I'm going to give them this. I'm going to give them, I'm going to give somebody $5,000 bonus for signing on with me. It's not the money. It's part of it. And the money should be at a certain level where it isn't an issue. So if you're underpaying your team, yes, obviously an issue. But if you're paying a good wage, whether it's a salary or per hour, that's perfectly fine. The way you motivate the team and your members is explaining to them what it is the company does, what their role is, what the opportunity is, how important they are. And the problem that I see is it's simply business owners aren't communicating that to their team members. They don't understand what it is they're supposed to be doing. And they're moving too quickly. They don't take the time to explain it to them, so they're not bringing them on the journey. The number one reason your team members leave is not for more money. It's for a better opportunity. So if they see a better opportunity somewhere else, that's where they're going to go. If you're underpaying them, yeah, they're going to leave for that. But if they don't see an opportunity to become the boss, to move up the ladder, to make more money, if they don't see a path, they're going to go. They're going to look at it as a dead-end job. Gone are the days when somebody would work for you for 20, 25 years. That doesn't happen. You have to be investing in your team, and you have to be explaining to them what opportunity there is. And if it's interesting, and that comes down to core values, vision, mission, all those other types of things that come along with it. And if they don't understand the core values, and if they don't understand how their participation in what it is they're doing plays into their overall experience, and how what they're doing is important to the success of the company and the job, everything falls on deaf ears. They're just going through the motions. And it was funny. I had a guy say to me one time, he said, my guys don't follow me. They just look at this as a job. I said, okay. I said, where's your business going? He said, well, I don't really know. I said, well, then of course they're just going to look at it as a job. If you don't know where you're going with your business, how do you expect your guys to follow you? It's like being on a cruise ship without any destination, without any port, that just kind of bouncing around all over the ocean. Nobody's going to want to be on that ship. They're going to want to get off and go somewhere where they're going to end up. So there's a lot of moving pieces to getting people bought in. But the first is, as the owner, knowing where you're going with your company, what your plans are.
Yeah, and I also that's a really great point, and I think that too often business owners tend to exclude people from that planning process.
Mhm.
Right? All good people have good ideas,
Mhm.
and if we as business owners don't take advantage of those thought processes that they have, and they're particularly, your organization is called Work Boots for a purpose,
Mhm.
right? And
Yep.
if you don't take into account the frontline workers with the work boots on in construction, and understand what some of their concerns and some of their ideas and directions that they want to go, how do they want to, where do they want to be in 2 years or 3 years or 4 years time? It's
Mhm.
really hard to motivate them if you don't take their ideas and their goals into account. So that's a really important point to cover off as well. You know, too often as business owners create disincentives
Mhm.
for, you know, they demotivate people
Yep.
because, you know, their thinking is, okay, well, I'm giving them a paycheck. What more do they want,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
They
Absolutely.
want to be part of a growing and healthy and vibrant organization. So that sharing the good news, you know, the good situations with them is important. And then being honest about when things aren't so good is also very important, because then you'll be surprised that how they'll come along and help resolve some of the problems that are standing in the way.
Mhm.
Okay,
Absolutely.
item next. It's to a great degree following on what we've just talked about. Let's talk about a little bit more about delegation and empowerment. And you know, we want to understand, you know, how do we learn to trust and empower our teams, help them take ownership in tasks and responsibilities. And you know, it goes back to that football team analogy. Um, if you're the wide receiver, that's the, you know, back when I played, we were called split ends.
Mm.
It sort of dates me a little bit. I
Yeah.
don't think anybody's been called a split end for a long, long
Mm-mm.
time. Today they're called wide receivers.
Right.
But I knew what my job was. And you know, I charged down the field and I made my cuts, and, you know, I tried to be where the quarterback was intending to throw the ball to me. That was part of I was empowered to do that. How do we empower our folks in construction? Where are the key areas in which we can begin to properly delegate so that they're going to be the best contributor to the team?
Clarity was number one. And when I say clarity is what is their position to be? What are their responsibilities? What are the things that they have to do? And if you don't, the thing about not giving somebody clarity, if you're not clear on what it is you're supposed to be doing, it's like you look back when you're a wide receiver, a split end. If the coach just told you run down the field and look for the ball, you go, okay, well, I don't really do it. Should I turn left? How far should I go? What's going on? All the other stuff. And that's why they have plays, and that's why you run plays. If you don't give people clarity on their role and what it is they're supposed to be doing, you're stressing them out. And people who are stressed out become people that they're not. You know, think of you being stressed. You generally become somebody that you're not normally. So you can't perform. You can't do the things that you're supposed to be doing. And all too often, when we find somebody, you think back to somebody that came on board with your team and you looked at them and they were the real, oh, this guy's going to be hit. Yeah, I know he's worked for other companies. He knows what he's supposed to do. So you turn them loose without any training, without any clarity, without any roles and responsibilities. And inevitably they fail. It falls apart because you're not delegating, you're abdicating your responsibility, which means there's no way of holding them accountable. There's no, because they're not held accountable to any standards because they're not clear on what it is they're supposed to be doing. You have to do it. So so look at it this way: if you're the person in the company that runs the job sites and you see one of your crew members could be the next crew lead, you have to take your role and it has to be spelled out step by step by step by step, daily responsibilities of what it is you're supposed to do. You turn that over to the potential crew lead and you train them. And you train them not so they can get it right, you train them so they can't get it wrong. And you make it as simple as you possibly can. And there has to be measurables on there. There has to be certain things that they have to do. These are my expectations. And once they're clear on that, you explain to them why they're doing that. You have to incentivize them, which means if you do this, you get that. And then you talked about disincentives. It's getting things out of their way so that they can do their job. You know, are they're the new crew, are the crew still coming back to you to ask you questions? You know, where's the communication, and making sure that people understand where the communication flow is going. And if you're not doing that, if you're just turning it over to somebody, I remember as a young guy, I think it was 2 years into the trade, was it, when I was thrown a set of truck keys and told to go run service calls. Okay, off I went. I was running service calls. Wasn't really sure what I was doing, but figured I could. I was cocky enough that I figured I could figure it out on my own. And when I called back in for help, the answer I always got was, "I don't know. You're there. I'm here. Figure it out." And that was it. So that trial by fire sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. Yeah, and I made a ton of mistakes doing what I was doing, but I did figure it out on my own. But I wasn't clear on what it was I was supposed to be doing.
Well, and so often when we at the net effect go in and start to work with particularly small contractors, one of the first things that we do is we say, do you have any documented standard operating procedures?
Mhm.
And sometimes yes, more often than not, the answer is no. Or
Mhm.
they may say, yeah, I wrote this procedure out 10 or 15 years ago, if you really dig right into it. And then you find out that so much has changed, or the person that they wrote it for, they had in mind when they wrote it's no longer with the organization. And a new person comes along who with a standard operating procedure would perform it very differently.
Mhm.
So that's an area that a lot of small contractors, be they GCs or subtrades, are quite weak in. And
Mhm.
so building those operating procedures, documenting workflows and those types of things will enable that young kid who got thrown into that service truck to be able to have some frame of reference that they
Mhm.
can say, ah, this is what I'm going to do when I go on that service call. And the improvement in efficiencies and the ability to empower people by saying, here's what our standard operating procedure is, follow it, but you can make it better as much as you want. That's called empowerment. And it's something that's a really key component that too often business owners don't enable their staff to engage in and improve with.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you and I had talked about earlier was the issue of mistakes. And
Mhm.
I shared with you a thought that or a point of view that my father always shared with me, and that was he'd always say, "You know what? I learned so much from my mistakes. I think I'm going to make a few more." Talk to me a little bit about how we shouldn't be creating an environment where someone is afraid to admit that they made a mistake, and how that can empower them as well.
Yeah, I've made glorious mistakes over my career and my life. I always failed with great panache. But it's interesting. I have a project manager that I'm working with and trying to get him to not be such a hard ass. So he said to me, "My team is not accountable." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "They hide mistakes." And I said to him, I said, "I don't want to tell you this." I said, "But that's a you thing." I said, "It's not a them." And the reason they're hiding the mistakes is you haven't created an atmosphere where it's okay to fail. It's okay to screw up. And it happens. But if somebody screws up, you got to tell them that they screwed up. I mean, I remember one time I had the service truck that I was driving. I wasn't really paying attention. I was doing something. It was brand new. It hadn't even been lettered up yet. And I went somewhere and I turned. I backed into a spot and then I pulled out. And instead of pulling out and then turning, I just cranked the wheel and turned. Well, I dented in the entire side of the van, like just in there was a mess, and I panicked. And instead of saying I screwed up, I made up some crazy story as to what happened. It happened in a parking lot. Well, anybody with half a brain knew that this couldn't happen in a parking lot. So if your team fears you, they're not going to be honest with you. If your team fears you, that is the lowest form of leadership. They're only following you because you're the boss. That's it. So that intimidation tactic, it will work but for a very short period of time, and you're never going to get the truth from your team. They're going to hide stuff from you all the time. Change orders, screw ups, delays, stuff happening that they forgot to order. They're going to lie to you, and you're never going to get the truth. So when any data that you're trying to pull from that project to see how you did is going to be skewed, because you're going to be giving crappy information. It's not going to be real information, bad data.
Right. So that corporate culture piece of building a trusting and open environment is a real key piece to enabling change. That's what we're talking about here today, is how do we enable change? How do we build the confidence in our entire organization so that they embrace change and welcome it and look forward to opportunities for improvement. So if you're suppressing that, whether it be through them feeling intimidated or feeling a need to be dishonest, and then everybody tells those little white lies and trying to cover things up. Well, there's a few angels out there that don't, but the fact of the matter is, to your point, if you're not getting honest and open communication from your people about what's happening in the field, in the office, wherever it might be, your projects and your processes are not going to be as good as they can be. So ultimately, that empowerment and that corporate culture is an important component of building a good organization. Okay. All right. I'm going in the wrong direction here. Overcoming resistance to change is what we were discussing basically in that previous one. But there's many common challenges that are faced in terms of that. Obviously, feeling intimidated or feeling that the boss is going to fire me if I tell them the truth about banging up that vehicle or whatever the case might be, is an obstacle to effective change management. So what other things do you see out there in that prevent good development or good opportunities for change?
Well, I mean, there's two ways that people don't buy into it. There's a few different ways. If you've tried something in the past and it failed, and you never went back to see why it failed, people don't want to see that change again. Perfect example is somebody that I know that was constantly jumping ships for the construction management software. They were going from this one to this one to this one. Well, by the time you get to the third one, your team is just tuned you out. It's like, okay, here we go again. He's on a rant. We're going to do something that's not going to stick. So nobody likes change. I don't like change. Nobody here likes change. Everybody likes consistency. And changing something is changing. There's the reason why we're changing it. So the first thing that you have to do is get excited for the change. Say, we're not going to be doing it this way any longer because dot, 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 dot. This is how it affects you. This is how it's going to make your life better, your workday better. It's going to make things clearer. It's going to make things better. And you have to explain how we're going to roll that change out, give them clarity on it, give them incentives to do it, remove the disincentives or the barriers in the way, coach them on that, hold them accountable, and check in on them all the time to make sure that they're okay. But don't, and I'm guilty of it too. And if you're the type of owner operator who has a shop and you have notices all over the place about not doing this and not doing that, you've given up. You're not connecting with your team anymore. You're not communicating with them. And that's the thing. That's the thing about getting people to change. People will not change if they're not following you. If you're not a leader, if you're that level 1 leader, they will begrudgingly follow you. But if they can see that you connect with them, you're involved with them, they want to follow you, they see the things that you're doing, they see what you're doing for them, they're more than apt to follow you. So this is it's a leadership issue again, which is a communication issue, which is connecting with your team members. But you can't get people to change if they're not willing to follow you. So you got to start with you.
Right. Again, corporate culture starts internally, very much to such an important degree. One of the other things that we find, because we do a lot of change management planning for our clients, and that is that we really need to start the change process for every employee before we begin suggesting any new software, new hardware, or new whatever into the system. We want to have a team meeting. Call it a toolbox talk or a tailgate talk, where we bring in everybody and, number one, share with them what the objective of this project is, the technical implementation project, what we want to try and achieve that's going to make their lives better at some point, whether it be, making a job easier, making it safer, providing them with better work-life balance, whatever the things are. And we want to hear from them, going back to that idea of there is no such thing as a bad idea. Right? We want to hear from them once they understand what the overall objective is, how they see it being achieved. There's not too many people that go to their job every day and don't say, hey, we could do this better if.
Mm-hmm.
And that you want to gather up all of their we could do this better if statements, give them full credit for it, build it into the plan. Sometimes they don't make sense, but usually they do. And let them see that they were able to make a substantial contribution to this new direction that the company is going in, whether in our case is a digital direction or a digital improvement direction, or it could be a business process direction. So it's really, really important that everybody in the organization be engaged in this process. If it's a huge organization, obviously you can't do that in every case, but smaller organizations really need to try and do that. And they will see that what happens is that once someone sees their idea actually being implemented, it's easy to get them on board for the whole package at the end of the day. So that's an important component or important strategy for getting employee buy-in throughout the change process.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. You said something earlier about SOPs or standard operating procedures. you need to have things, it's standardized. And the reason you standardize operations is so that you can get a consistent result. If
Mhm.
things are not standardized, you're going to get results all over the place where jobs aren't over, jobs are profitable, jobs are not profitable. So that's why you have to get those things standardized. Something as simple as I don't know, plumbers clearing main drain. If the end goal is that you want a main drain replacement or repair something, there's certain processes that you have to follow along the way to get that result. And I remember the day we asked our guys, I asked each one of them individually, how do you do XYZ? And each one had a different way of doing it, which meant the result was completely different, which told us that okay, we need to standardize this. Whether you guys like it or not, this is what we're going to do to standardize it because this is what is going to happen. Some of the guys complained about it. Most of them said this is what we should be doing. And then you go back, you don't just implement the change and leave it. You go back and ask them their opinion. How is it going? What challenges are you having? Gather feedback from them and listen to your team. So don't just force change down upon them, or don't be wishy-washy when you do implement change either, because either way won't work.
Right, right. So that brings us to our last key point here, and we've got a few minutes to sort of wrap things up. But this everything that we've talked about to this point is about implementing effective systems and processes. Those those processes are designed to optimize operations, reduce errors. Like you've just said, Rick, if everybody's got a different way of doing the same thing, chances are, as business owners, we're looking at it from the point of view of how is this affecting my bottom line? And usually those inefficient or disorganized processes are costing us money.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If we don't start to say, this is the way we're going to do things here at ABC Construction, and put together those standard operating procedures, manuals, and automating workflows and doing those types of things, your work is very haphazard and your profitability is very haphazard too.
Mm-hmm.
So we've seen, I know that you've seen in the work that you do with Workboot, you've seen so many disorganized and inefficient systems and processes, and that's a big part of your efforts on behalf of your clients as it is with ours. So creating streamlined workflows today also means how can we automate them? What
Yep.
technologies can we bring in that can be used to send out an automated email to our suppliers when goods haven't arrived on the job site on time, or send them a reminder, or send ourselves a reminder that we need to check something to make sure that it's ready for tomorrow's activity, etc. So those are the kinds of things that are necessary. Which technology can be applied in order to make them more efficient, but it also is, a lot of it is in the heart and
Mm-hmm.
somebody's desire to do their best. And that comes back to that corporate culture thing as well. So any last and final words of wisdom, Rick, before we let our audience get back to the rest of their day?
Um, just embrace the change that's coming. If I can say anything, this is not my line. Don't abdicate, delegate, which means don't just push something off your plate. And like you said, Craig, you have to embrace the change that's coming. The technology, yeah, absolutely. Embrace the technology that's coming. Automate as much as you can.
Right. And we do a lot of work with contractors and subcontractors who are keen on what's going to happen with AI. And like I say to all of them, the AI horse has left the barn. You're already on it. So what you need to do is you need to understand how your organization is going to have to change through the implementation of that type of technology. And if you don't, your future is somewhat limited. So we all have to respect that change is coming. It's inevitable. It's a question of how we manage it. That's going to make life easier and make our businesses better. So, having said that, thank you very much, Rick. We are finished at Q2, as we like to every week, and we look forward to seeing a lot of you that are with us today make great change as you go forward. Thank you very much, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.
Thanks, guys. See ya.